So I'll start out by saying that we are elevating event technology today because we brought Dan in via Zoom. So there's already a start with the elevating of event technology. Again, thank you for being here. My name is James Rutt. As I said, I'm the CIO here with Cogent. We are a production company based out of Denver, Colorado, and been with Cogent for going on 8 years, and been in the events industry for 17 or 18 years, probably somewhere in that range, and then in IT for going on, I'm aging myself here, and going on 27 or so years. So just really enjoy I've done a lot of different facets and aspects of IT, but the event side is really the most that I've enjoyed, is obviously because I've been doing it for the longest. And I'll start out also by saying to you guys that originally the plan for this, we knew we were going to be doing the audio visual for the event. We're so thankful for CAD to allow us to do so. So I'm here project managing and running the show. And then Dan, who was going to be doing this presentation, we had another situation pop up, which is good things to have, right? You have more business, Dan has to be other places. So we decided that it would be great to still have Dan be involved because this is really his talk. So we brought him in via Zoom. So we wanted to do that. So today, again, we're going to be hopefully helping you guys talk, how event technology, using within your organizations, within your associations, how you budget for it, all the ins and outs. So I will turn it over to Dan and let him get started.
Awesome. Thank you, James. Yeah, good to see everybody. We figured that this, like being able to do Zoom here, really is case in point, right? If you look at, we'll talk about this later, but just from one perspective, contingency planning, right? And how using technology and putting that into plan A can really kind of save the day. And we've had, just this last week with all of the flight cancellations and things like that, we've had to implement dozens of contingency plans, right? And they're all technology based. So anyway, so I wish I could be there in DC with you. Actually, can I get everybody to wave so I can make sure that James didn't Photoshop a bunch of attendees into the room? Okay, perfect. Good to see everybody. So I'm Dan Stones. I've been with Cogent about a year now. I've spent 18 plus years on the association planning side. So for a number of different companies, education, higher education, IT, medical, all sorts of stuff. And then after that, I went to Merit's Global Solutions, or Global Events, for a little bit as an account director. And then my family and I moved to Japan for half the year last year. And I joined Cogent when I got back. And so I got my start in AV back when I was a student at the University of North Texas, and have always loved it. That was always my favorite part of planning meetings, was doing the AV side. And so I'm finally back to that side that I'm really passionate about. So very happy to be here. And as if that didn't keep me busy enough, I'm also the current president of Rocky Mountain PCMA chapter. And so lots of involvement in the industry from a number of different sides. So very, very excited to be here with y'all today. So thanks for joining us for this session. It's something that we really think is important and are excited to talk about. So James, you want to go to the next slide? All right. So just a real high level look at what we want to try and cover today. We want to talk about this topic. Obviously, we want to cover the why. We feel that that's a really important part of it. And we're going to dig into the how. And then we're going to try and have enough time at the end for a little bit of group work. So hopefully we can get through the rest of this quickly enough. It is a huge topic. I think James and I could give a week-long seminar at the very least, just with this slide deck that we're trying to do today. So we're going to stick pretty high level, but then we're going to do a couple of deep dives really into the why, because it's important to understand and articulate the why. If you can't do that, it's going to be the rest of it's going to be very hard. And then we'll really kind of focus on those first steps of the how, so that you can get started, right? Start moving that needle, and then kind of give you a brief look at some of the tools, things like that that'll come afterwards. So, all right. But first, we are going to do a poll. We want to see what level of impact you think technology is going to have on your job in the next 10 years. So, A, everything will be different. B, it's going to change a lot, but not everything. C, it will change, certainly, but less than the media hype. D, it's only media hype, no changes. Or E, I don't care because I'm going to be retiring soon. It's starting to roll in. Okay. Well, I'm sorry to see nobody's
Oops,
retiring soon.
sorry.
Oh,
Sorry,
that's
hold
okay.
on. The IT guy's
Like,
messing you up, Dan. I apologize.
that's all good.
I was trying to move the captions out of the way. There we go.
Okay, good. That's still up. That's good. Okay. Okay, we got B. It will change a lot. Okay, 55, 56%. That's really pretty close to where I thought that distribution was going to be, and I totally agree. James and I have talked about it. B is likely where it's going to be. I think we're close to A, right? Things are going to change really quickly, but there are going to be some, and we'll talk about some of the obstacles to that here in a little bit. But cool. Well, thank y'all for responding. Um, and again, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And again, sorry to see nobody's retiring soon. I wish I could put myself in that category too, but no such luck yet. Okay, so as promised, we're going to start with the why, and it's really important, because if you don't understand why this is important, it's going to be very difficult for you to articulate that why to other people, to try and convince other people that we need to move the needle on those things. And if you can't articulate it, honestly, like most of your projects, if you can't articulate why they're important, are kind of dead in the water before you start. And so that's why we're taking a deep dive on this portion in particular. We think it's really important. So all right, onward, James. Thank you, sir. You're an excellent slide advancer, James, even via remote. So appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Don't push it.
Thanks. Okay. You know me better than that. So we're gonna mention this a little bit later too. This fits into some of the first steps in the how, but one of the first steps is really assessing where you are, and I think it fits both in the why and in the how, right? Because it's those initial steps, and really helps give you the context that you need to be able to talk about it later. And so we're really going to start from kind of basics, and we're going to talk about like tech timeline, so past, present, future, and kind of where we've been, where we are, and where we're headed, and what some of that technology is going to be as we head into the next chapter. And so I figure, since James is so much older than I am, he could probably be a lot better at doing the covering the past. So James, go for it.
Thank you, Dan. You didn't tell me how you're going to set me up there. That's appreciated.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Well, he's absolutely right. I mean, in the past, and this is where I sort of got started in technology, mid to late 90s. We were IT guys were more about, if we sat in our offices all day and didn't get a phone call, that means we had a good day. So they called us when they needed equipment fixed. They called us when there was a problem. When I was actually with a nonprofit organization in the late 90s to the early 2000s, and we had an annual conference. And so I was brought to the conference, but was I brought to present? Not really. Was I brought to, help do any specific technology? No, not really. I was there to do what I did in the office. I was there to support the IT that was happening on site, and that's kind of how we were vision. The user expertise was low. People then didn't seem to necessarily want to learn as much. They knew how to do their job functionality. Like my mother, for example, she thinks she's great on the computer. It's because she knows how to do her job function. But if I take her out of her comfort level, she's lost, right? And so that's kind of the way it was. It was optional. Slow. Change was slow. Even though for us at the time, it seemed like change was happening rapidly, because it always feels that way to the generation that you're in. But it was slow, obviously, in comparison to today's standards. And to tell a funny story, we had a vice president who worked for that same association I'm speaking of, and we had email, obviously, and email was kind of a new thing. And he didn't trust it, apparently, because every email he received, he printed. Not only did he print that email, he put it in a file cabinet, and he had it sorted in file folders. So I'm just giving you an example of most of you are too young to remember that, but some of you may remember some of those days. So that's the way we were, and that's how we were in the past. So now as we get into the current times, obviously we still are seen as a support, but in a much higher level. We are involved in all facets of security, and the security obviously these days is a big part of what we try to do, and it should be. If it's not, then you're going to run into problems. We do support, strategy. We're not always a priority, but most of the time we are more of a priority than we were in the past. So we are, if there's going to be a conference nowadays, as you see here with the Cadmium Conference, there's a lot of tech going on. So we have all different facets and all different aspects. So tech is touching just about everything. And of course, AI, we're going to bring it up today because everybody's bringing it up. Everybody's talking about it. And I know you've seen this because this gets said, I think, anytime anyone is doing an AI presentation. It won't take your job, but those who use it will. And I think there is some truth to that. It's just like, for me, for example, and I keep, Dan's got me set up here to age myself, I guess, is what I'm going to be doing all day. But obviously, with me being so far back in the days of tech, I have to continue to move forward with tech if I want to remain in the industry and move forward in my job and be able to be successful. And that's what all of us are going to have to do. You either embrace it or you get left behind. That's just the way it's always been and the way it will be, and even more so now with the evolution of AI and as we move forward. So, Dan, I think you had a story about your father here too, right?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, James. It was a good walk through those, the past and the current. So my father similarly he prints, like, when we come home for the holidays, I get a Google sheet so that we can walk through our plans, like what we're doing while we're in town and who we're going to spend time with, blah, blah, blah. And he prints those out. And then he gets upset because I make changes to the Google Doc and it's not reflected on his printed sheet of paper that he printed last week. And so, so I go through the same thing with the printed emails, right? But the thing about my dad is he was in higher education IT. So he spearheaded all of these major projects for the entire Texas university system that dragged them kicking and screaming into the digital era. So he was like electronic transcripts from high schools to colleges, common applications, you fill it out once and send it to all universities. Like, he did all that kind of stuff. So he was at the forefront of IT. And now he's reduced to printing Google Docs. And he won an iPad at a technology conference a few years ago, and had never had one yet. And so 4 months go by and I see him at home and he was like, "Yeah, you see my iPad? It's pretty cool." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's great, Dad." He's like, "Well, somebody tells me there's a camera on this thing. How do I go about accessing that?" and so, I teased him a lot. I was like, "Dude, didn't you were a major IT figure and you can't figure out an iPad?" He said, "Well, it doesn't have a DOS prompt." And for those of you who are old enough to remember what a DOS prompt is, and so, I mean, case in point, like, if you don't stay on top of it, he was gone from IT for a few years. He'd been retired, and all of a sudden, he was not up to date anymore on the technology that he needed in order to do that stuff. So, kind of case in point. All right, James, you want to go towards the future? All right, perfect. So really, as we look towards the future, James mentioned this, it's the pace of change is going to continue. It's going to continue to get faster and faster. So it's got an exponential curve to that pace of change. And so IT is going to take a more prominent role in your strategic planning. They're going to get a larger chunk of the budget. They're going to be, earlier in the process and more prominent. And right now we're kind of in this place where, you're talking about products and talking about how you want to engage in your community. You're like, we're going to do these things. Okay, now let's see how technology can support that. And coming very quickly, that the order of that's going to change. We're going to start with, okay, what technology is available in 3 to 5 years? What does that landscape look like? Okay, now that we know that, how are we going to design our products and our customer engagements and things like that around IT? So it's just a little flip in the order of questions, but it showcases how important this is going to be, because you can't do anything unless that technology is there to support you. And the pace of change, again, it's going to be so fast. We've got refrigerators now that can keep track of whether we need more milk or not, right? And I think pretty soon we're going to end up needing some sort of technology that's sole purpose is to keep track of all of the other technology advancements and be able to make recommendations to us and our organizations and things like that as to what might be good for us to check out, what we should be researching, what we should be doing, because there's so many changes that there's no way the human brain itself can keep pace with that. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that changes. And like James said, AI won't take your job, but the person using AI will. And in the future, like, I know it's kind of grim. I don't mean to be Debbie Downer, but the reality is it's going to start taking more jobs, right? Just like the iPhone took away, cameras, took away all sorts of other technologies. Like, it's going to happen. If you're an Uber or Lyft driver right now and you're not worried about autonomous vehicles taking your job, you probably should be. And so, we're not there yet, but I think that that's going to be a reality that we're facing really in the next 5 to 10 years. And so, anyways, so again, it's just something to be aware of. And I think it provides that why you need to stay on top of this, right? Because you need to stay ahead of that curve, or else you can easily get left behind. And actually, James, I think you have a story about a fun story about a robot as well that you wanted to share.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So, yeah, I just left Louisville. We were there for the National Association of College and University Food Services Conference. And they had a company, the exhibit hall, and I don't remember the name of it. If you come to me after this, I'll look it up and tell you who it was. But they are developing a new solution for food delivery, and they're using robots to deliver the food. So the robots themselves they're on four wheels, they're short, they're sort of heavy, which is a good thing because of what happened when I was there. They will, right now they're only rolling them out to college campuses because they're doing a test to see how they're going to function and work. So we were seeing them all over the street. People were curious about them, wondering, and I asked them if I was at the booth about them, so I knew what they were. One morning early, I was coming into the convention center for work, and there was a homeless gentleman who saw one, and it was coming at him, and so he decided to challenge it. He jumped in front of it. He wouldn't let it pass. He tried to pick it up, but it was too heavy, so he quit doing that, but he just refused to let it go. So if you want to know what happens to a robot delivering food, when a person steps in front of it, it just stops. And it started alarming, and then it just doesn't do anything. But I just thought that was a funny story, because obviously that may be something they have to concern themselves with, that they're sending out robots in these cities where people, whatever. But anyway, new tech, here we go. So.
Can you see your like Uber delivery driver just like stopping and freezing in the street and start sending out an alarm just because nobody will let them pass? So still, it'll take us a little while before the robots take those jobs, right? But we're still headed that way. Thank you, James. So I just wanted to again hit kind of this idea of that pace of change and what's coming. It's exponential. Tomorrow we're gonna have twice as many new things as we did today, and and it really is like it's really quick pace. So that technology is going to become available. People are going to start adopting it and using it. Then customers will have new expectations surrounding that. And then your competition is right on the heels of that to provide the customers and meet those expectations. And so. So it's really important that you're focused if you want to keep your customers and you want to keep them engaged and stay ahead of your competition. It's really important to stay on top of this because you need to beat your competition. And when you're talking about coming back to this idea of being able to articulate the why to others, when you're talking to your C-suite and you're talking to your exec team about these strategic priorities and why technology needs to be a part of this, really focusing on customer expectations and your competition are some of the terms that are gonna it's gonna get their attention quicker, because these are the things that really are top priorities for them as they're managing the organization as a whole. And so adjusting your rhetoric to fit that is really important, right? And so when you talk about your competition, if you're in the association world and you haven't heard of like Emerald and Informa and folks like that, there are a lot of companies out there that are going around and creating events around your communities, and they're kind of poaching your dates, and they're building in more engaging technology solutions into their conference. And so there a lot of organizations are facing that right now. They're at risk of going under because people aren't going to their event anymore. They're going to this other version of the event. So it's something to look into, especially as you're trying to justify this to your C-suite. So just a thing to think about, thing to look into, and a way to frame that information. And then I think James is going to get into a little bit about some of this emerging technology and some of the major pieces that are coming. There's so much to this, but we're going to, again, kind of stick fairly high level for you today, but give you enough to get you going. So James, let's go for it.
Yeah, so these are just, some key terms. We're not going to go through all of these. A lot of these terms, obviously, you've heard, but maybe you don't know a lot about. And I recommend highly that each of you, maybe take a picture of this, or there's going to be a recording, so you'll have it for later. But all of these pieces are very, they're coming, they're here. They're going to be utilized more and more. One of the things that excites me as we move forward, I know it's still years out and it's further away in development. I'm reading and hearing about 2030 is the timeline possibly for this. But 6G, the capabilities of what we can do with 6G in regard to the speed, and I don't know, I know a lot of you guys are, maybe you're IT and somewhat, but the speed in which the differences between 5G and 6G are just astronomical. You know, we're talking about 1 terabit per second in a speed scenario. That's almost hard to fathom for somebody who goes back as far as I do. But obviously, in order to utilize these tools, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, all the different realities, you've got to have speed and technology that allows you to do interactions with those things, because all of those things require human interaction with technology. In order to achieve that on a high level and in all the everywhere level, you've got to have the speed, and the 6G is going to bring that. Obviously, IoT, Internet of Things, you can do some reading and understanding about that. All the different realities, you know, Dan actually said this, I'm going to steal his thunder, you know, there's more different realities than there are voices in his head. So there's a lot of different types of realities. So, you know, most of you have heard of virtual and augmented, but a lot of you haven't heard of the others, so I would research that. Web3, you know, that's a brand new thing that's coming out, and it's all tied into the what you might want to refer to as the metaverse. You know, if you go out and you look up the definition of metaverse, it kind of just is a very broad term. But these are key terms that you should all be familiarizing yourself, so you can look to see how some of these things may be able to be implemented, you know, for your meetings. I also highly recommend, if you can, scan this QR code. This is a Google Doc that we've established that goes into more of a deep dive of what I was showing you on the screen a second ago. It gives you the opportunity to do some research. And this is really probably something that, you know, you may want to set a day aside, which I know for most of us is hard to do, but it takes time to research all these. And all of them aren't going to fit or pertain to what you're doing, but there are going to be things in regards to association business, and as Dan was saying, rolling out new types of technologies. If your customers or your attendees are going and seeing these things at other events, they're going to expect to see them, you know, at all events, and so you have to keep up and understand the new things that are coming and how they affect you. So that's kind of, you know, obviously what we're going to be getting into more today. Everybody get a chance to scan that? Oh, is it messing you up? Sorry, hold on a second. The captions are in the way. There we go. Move that down here. Sorry, Dan, the captions were in the way. They weren't able to scan that QR code easily.
Got it, okay. All we have to do is stop talking, James, and they'll be fine.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm the one that's talking too much today. Okay.
Sorry, everybody good then on the QR code? Okay. Okay, cool. And we can also email that out or anything.
Absolutely, yeah. Come see me afterwards if you didn't get it. We're happy to provide it to you. We're going to move on. So, you know, the next thing that we're going to mention is that, yeah, we're taking a lot of steps forward, obviously, every day with the technology and what we're able to do, but then there's always the step back, right? There's problems related to these technologies, whether it be, you know, self-driving vehicles. Dan mentioned that earlier, talking about Uber drivers, you know, that should be concerned about losing their jobs to that potential. But then you've got a self-driving vehicle that has a problem, right? Somebody gets injured. Somebody, unfortunately, you know, God forbid, somebody gets killed. You know, that's when lawsuits roll out and you start to have slowdowns, and you have to, you know, you've got worry, concerns over facial recognition, which has actually been going on for a while. I know for a fact when I came here, left Dallas, that's the way that the airport does it now. You walk up, you scan your face, and it does speed the process up, which is wonderful. But you can opt out of that if you want. There's nothing that forces you to take part in that. And because there were lawsuits, I believe, back in 2020 in regards, you know, to that. And so anytime, you know, there's technology there, there's going to be possible concerns with someone that sees it as a, you know, invasion of privacy or whatever the case may be. And then, of course, with the, you know, with the concerns over facial recognition, you know, there are concerns over certain groups feeling like they're being singled out because it affects them more than it does others. So there's big issues, you know, with those kinds of problems. And of course, with AI, the big concern is intellectual property. And obviously that's something you guys are very familiar with association business. You know, these scientific, especially associations, these folks are spending years in research and years getting their stuff together, and they want to be protective of that. That is their intellectual property. And so when you're dealing with AI, that is another big concern. So we're moving forward, but we have to keep in mind that there's going to be things that step us back in regards to legal aspects and, you know, various things of that nature. Cybersecurity, you know, has to be the fix for this. And so that's what is going to hopefully get us through. And that's something that now, more so than ever, in your departments, your IT people need to be understanding that cybersecurity is job one, and we have to be careful. I mean, what did we have happen the other day? That wasn't a security issue, as I understand it, but those types of issues are causing major shutdowns. We're speeding ourselves up with the great use of the new technology, but when there is a problem with that great technology, we can end up with a complete bottleneck. And so that's why security is going to be a big component of what we're doing, and in educating ourselves, and then of course making the spend. There's aspects to the spend you're going to be making with these decisions. Part of that spend is going to have to be in regards to security. So when your security folks and your IT folks are telling you that there's valid concerns and we need to be doing certain things, you need to listen to them and understand that. Otherwise, you could be the cause of some of the problems that we're dealing with as we move forward. Okay, Dan, I think you're taking over here.
Yeah, thank you, James. And and it's good. Like GDPR can be a real pain sometimes, but it is kind of one of those guidelines that forces us to pay attention to this, and it is important, right? There's a lot at stake if you make mistakes on that stuff. So very important to focus on that. And getting into adaptability, really. If you do some reading, do some research on, listen to people talk about the predictors for future success, right? Like how likely an organization or an individual is going to be to succeed in the future. Adaptability is on almost every one of those lists, and frequently towards the top of that list. And I would claim that it should be at the top of that list. I think if you're not adaptable and you can't handle change, it's going to be very, very difficult for you moving forward. And I think it's the case for businesses. It's the case for individuals. It's on all of us to really focus on how we can be adaptable as we move forward. And I'd go a step farther to say that adaptability and technology they're interdependent and they're inseparable. So I think anytime you're talking about adaptability, technology is a piece of that conversation, because if you're not adaptable, you're not going to be able to use the technology that's available. And if you're not using the technology that's available to you, you're not going to be adaptable, because you need that technology to help you keep pace with all of these things. And so really it's just that those two come as a package deal, and it's going to be, again, your company won't succeed if you're not adaptable, and you're not going to be adaptable with that technology. And so it's just a very direct line from organizational success to technology, and a critical piece of that narrative. And I think we're going to go into a poll next, and I want to see how much of a priority you think that technology and innovation is at your organization. And so we've kind of put this in terms of, like, again, relating it back to the strategic priorities. So when you look at the strategic priorities for your organization, where does technology fit into that? So are some of you, if so, that 100%, that means your organization absolutely has technology as a strategic priority. B, there's some mention of it, but like kind of a support role. Like, we want to do this thing, and oh yeah, we'll use some technology to do it. Then the next one down, C, is that it's not really mentioned specifically, but there's maybe some language that is in there that you could tie to technology. And so you just have to get creative with your language and how you look at that. And then of course D, where there's just there's no hope for your strategic plan to be tied to technology. I hope nobody's at the 0, but we'll see. Okay. All right. I think this is a pretty good split. I'm honestly very surprised to see 100% at that A is at the 65% of y'all. That makes me really happy to hear, actually. So that's good. I'm glad to hear that y'all are on the right track. And hopefully, again, we can get some more tidbits how you make that better today. And but B and C, I think, are those areas where there's a lot of power and a lot of potential for y'all. And we're going to talk a little bit about kind of how we do that, like how we use our language and how we use this process, the why and the how, to get where we need to go. So very cool. I appreciate y'all responding. James, you want to head on? All right. So again, moving into why event tech specifically, we've talked about technology and adaptability and organization success, but why the event specifically? And I would imagine that most folks in this room, I don't need to convince you of this, but for most organizations, the event is the backbone of the organization, right? It's where you meet your customers. It's where you test new products. It's where you get together. Um, and so I think that yeah, again, y'all probably don't need the convincing, but this is going back to this idea of being able to articulate it. I know you know it, but can you convince somebody else that this is that important? And so this is why we're kind of going through this exercise to help with that narrative, help build that out for you. So now we can move on, James. Thanks. And so this is kind of a very short list that we compiled to highlight some of these top ways that we feel events really are mission critical for the organization and what they provide that is going to be very difficult for the organization to get elsewhere if the event isn't good or the event goes away or anything like that. So, but I'm sure these look familiar, not a surprise, but I'd like to do a poll again. I want to see what do you see, what do you think your events do that are mission critical that you don't see on this list right now? And so we'll go to an open-ended poll now, and I just want to hear from you. What are some of the other ways that you feel like your event is key to your organization's success? Is there anything that comes to mind for y'all? Yep. Professional development. Yep. Education, educates and empowers member engagement. Hmm. Yeah. 100%. Yep. Yeah, well, it's interesting to see. Yeah, and it really is very, very customer centric, right? What is this community doing? How are we making it better? How are we making our community stronger and smarter? Um, yeah, and that's, I mean, that really is at the heart of what associations do. Yeah, new members. I totally agree. Totally agree. I think this is a great list. All right, and we'll keep. Okay, we've got one more person. You know, customer feedback. Yeah, I like that too. And we're going to talk about feedback and like the importance of that a little bit later on. Um, awesome, great list. I love it. All right, but for the sake of time, we'll keep on moving. Again, got a ton to cover today. So thank you all for your responses. I appreciate that. So again, we're bringing it back. We took kind of that list um, and a number of lists that we saw in articles and presentations and things like that, and we really boiled it all down to these three key components that really significantly they they articulate the why for your organization, right? All of these things that your event does provide you with competitive advantage, operational efficiency, and customer experience, right? That's where technology plays the biggest role for your organization. And so again, getting into this, how do you articulate it? How do you get the exec team to listen to you as you're trying to advance these strategic priorities and these initiatives? And using this language, because this language is, I almost promise you that this language is guiding how your strategic priorities are written. And so, you know, this idea of using the language that's already being used and using that to your advantage, learning how they talk about things, and then using that as you're justifying this type of project is really important. So, all right, James, let's keep moving. All right, and then, but kind of before we get to you talking to your organization about why it's important to them that we do these things, if you're going down this road and you're taking on this project of trying to advance technology and how you tie that to strategic priorities, you're going to spend a lot of time and effort. Like it's going to add to your workload, and so it's really important, I think, that all of you in this room like intrinsically understand that it's also going to benefit you, right? So that's, you know, we want the organization to be successful, but how is this going to help me in my day-to-day job? Like all this time and money or energy that I'm investing, is that going to pay off later on, or is this just adding to the burnout? And so So we could talk about any of these at length, but I really wanted to obviously focus on contingency planning today. We already talked about that a little bit. I would much rather be there in DC with you, but I had to be here in Austin, and we're it's yeah. But because we have technology baked into Plan A, then it wasn't difficult to switch into contingency planning mode. And so rather than having a canceled presentation today, it's just a little bit different, right? You get to see my hotel room in Austin, Texas, rather than me walking around with James. And so, and it was very, very little lift to make that switch for us. And we almost had to do that here in Austin because of the flight issues. We had half of our presenters almost didn't make it the other night. And so, technology wasn't really baked into this particular event the way that we would normally do it. And so we were up all night on phone calls and we were trying to run through all these contingency plans. And so, where we could have gone to bed at 9 o'clock and gotten rest for the next morning, we had to spend all night like, okay, all right, where can we get laptops from, and how can we do Zoom here, and how can we do that? And so that would have been really nice if that contingency plan had been baked into Plan A. So, and I want to give James a little bit too, because James works in a lot of the speaker ready room, session recordings, digital signage, and stuff like that. And I know that there's a lot of great contingency planning that happens that we see used effectively at a lot of our clients' events. So James, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, he's right. I mean, it was easy for us to do what we did here today because we do it all the time, right? So for some of you, this wouldn't be as easy as it was for us, but you have to keep in mind that you've got to take advantage of the technology. And in the buildings, like here in the convention center, working with Cadmium, it was very easy because they knew what we needed. We're already running a speaker ready room here, so we already have presentation management occurring. That means we have a network in place already. So with the network in place and internet in place, that made it easy to implement a Zoom call into this. I will say this, a lot of times people don't realize this. We do a little bit of added tech to make this work seamlessly. As you know, Dan can be heard well and he can hear us well. You can't just walk into a room with a computer, turn on Zoom, and expect it to do what we're doing here. But with very little money spent and some added components, you can make this work well. I have seen customers that obviously can't do this or don't want to spend for this. They will then maybe have their people record. I mean, just this week alone, you all know we had a major issue with flights, people being able to get somewhere else. Dan is at a conference that dealt with it. We have another conference going on in Philly that dealt with it big time. We went from having 2 remote presenters via Zoom to having 15 remote presenters via Zoom because of that. So you have to be able to, move and switch. Obviously, Speaker Ready plays a big part in this, and obviously Cadmium, as you guys are going to get to see, hopefully their new solution, which is amazing and awesome. As far as making certain your presenters are taken care of, getting files to the rooms on time, making people feel comfortable, having that help they need to get their slides ready. That's all part of it. Then digital signage, that's something that we can help you with, obviously. We just had a big conference in June. We had 30-plus breakout rooms. We had digital signs outside of each one. That's a great tool for your attendees to be able to see what's next, what's happening in the room now, who the presenters are, what their credentials are, all the different aspects of that. So, again, you have to determine, some of the things we're going to get into is not every piece of technology is going to fit for your particular conference. What I do get frustrated with is I see people, and I don't blame them, they want to try things, they want to test things, but they don't do it for the right reasons. They're doing it for the sake of doing it. And so we need to be careful of that. We want to make certain that we're using the best tools of technology that fit to your particular event. You're not going to need to use everything that's out there, but certain aspects of it will work well for your event. So, Dan, you ready to move forward?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, James. Appreciate that. Yeah, so that's a wrap up of why, and we're gonna have to, James, we'll have to speed this up as we go through the how.
I know, we're running out of time.
Again, it's just so much, so much great stuff to talk about though. There's, and so anyway, so this is just wrap up of the why. We've talked about the timeline, some of the technology that's coming, how important adaptability is, and that tie to technology, the importance of your events specifically, and then also really how to articulate that why to others. And so, but now we'll move into the how. And again, start heavier with the first couple of steps, and then kind of review some of the rest of that process. But let's go into a poll real fast. What are your biggest hurdles to advancing technology at your events? Open answer. And James and I have talked about it. We're pretty sure we know what number one's going to be. But we want to hear from you. What are
number one answer?
Yep, there it is. Yep. Ding, ding, ding. We got a winner. Older generations. I like that. Yep. We talk about it. We have some notes about resistance to change. Money, budget, customer adoption, right? Yep, yep. Audience compliance, engagement, like that. Yeah, some audiences are more welcoming to the technology than others, for sure. Um, Too many options. Yeah, yep. Staff training. Yeah, all this. Yeah, you're a lot of these nails on the head that you're hitting. All right, let's keep going again in honor of time. But yeah, 100% agree. Those are some of the big obstacles that we talk about too. So, all right, James, I think you're gonna.
So, as we go through this, what we're providing you here is a, strategic plan. And we've talked about usage of, AI and different functionality. This is an example of a chat GPT function. You ask it, what's a great, boilerplate for strategic plan, and then it rolls out some great big words with with great information on it, right? But this does fit adequately into what we're talking about. You need to make certain that you're assessing your situation and then having your vision as you move forward, taking an analysis of where you are, and then making certain, as I said a moment ago, that whatever tech you're trying to utilize is aligning with your goals, right? What is it you're trying to accomplish? Setting up a roadmap, determining your initiatives, making sure, again, that it's following your goals. Key performance indicators, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. And then continuous improvement. Obviously, that entails, what we already do a lot of, right? Surveys, things of that nature, whether it be before the event, after the event, doing a comparison of what you did and then seeing how well it worked. Social media aspects, determining, what people said, what they saw, the pictures they took, things of that nature. All of these are, part of a good strategic plan for your organization.
Perfect. Yeah, and another key piece of Chat GPT is you have to iterate with that. That wasn't the first thing that popped out. We had to play with that a little bit, and in the end, this is where I actually kind of disagree. I think that there's a different number one that comes in this strategic plan and how to go about it. And so we can go to the next slide. Because it's getting help, right? Seeking out others. And that's what, like, the people in this room with you are other people who are like-minded. And so just kind of proof that there are a lot of other people around you who are thinking about this, who are prioritizing it. You probably have coworkers that are focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, accessibility, sustainability, CSR projects. All of this stuff can be assisted with technology. So there's a lot of overlap in this, in what you're working on. So find those people, use them, like combine forces, and you're going to get a lot farther, a lot faster. I know I'm PCMA Rocky Mountain president, but so shameless plug, but join PCMA, join MPI, join these networks and these communities of people who are in the industry and talking about these things. You can get a lot from them, a lot of great ideas. What are people using? What's happening? And reach out to your suppliers. I know it sounds like another shameless plug, but the projects that I was most successful on as a planner involved my suppliers and having open conversations about what's available and what's there, what's right for us, what can we afford? Maybe we can't afford that, but there's this other thing. And so you really need to be able to trust your suppliers and involve them in those conversations. And it may sound silly, but if you don't have partners that you trust to have those conversations, you need different partners, you need different suppliers, because that relationship and the ability to talk through those and work through those issues together with your suppliers is absolutely critical moving into the next stage. So, all right, James, let's keep going.
Yeah, and I'll just interject too, Dan, before we move forward. On the, a moment ago we did the poll, and I think the number one answer for you guys was funding, budgets, things of that nature, moving forward with tech. We are a partner. We want to provide what you need, and we're excited when you come to us with ideas. And we're not just about giving you that tech. We can also help you with that budget question. So I'm not going to get into that right now because we're at lack of time. But talk to me if you're interested later about creative ways to deal with the budgets, because you got people that you're answering to for that, and you don't want to waste money, and you're limited. So let's talk about that and see what creative ways we can come up with to take care of that for you. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
Absolutely. No, and tons of options on that, right? And we can help you point to what areas we can really do. So we're going to launch into the second stage, or the first boilerplate stage, assessment and vision. And again, we talked about this a lot earlier, and it's the understanding where you are, why this is important, and really then being able to use language to articulate that. So, James, we're going to go through this part pretty quickly. So, again, we're going to focus on current state, right? That's step one. Where are you? And so let's keep going. I want to see. So we've got our poll coming up. Um, and let's see real quick, what kind of cool technology are you seeing at conferences or that you've started to use at your own events? I think it's next slide. There we go. So if you're using a particular type of technology or you've seen something and use it, like, PCMA, IMAX, C2, whatever, what are you seeing? What's some technology that is neat, that's innovative, that's kind of changing the game for you?
Oh, yeah. You saw Slido
Slido.
today, right?
Hey, there you go. Good. I'm glad that's helping. Yeah.
And there are many options besides Slido out there, but Slido is a good one. I do like Slido.
Yep. Yep. Hair meat. Okay. Yeah. Yep.
Yep, which is also being done here
Q&A,
today, which is great.
integration. Yep. I saw one of the questions pop up just a second ago in the app. Stations. Okay. Great. Okay, cool. Well, we'll keep rocking and rolling. I think those are some great ideas, and just case in point, like, reach out to folks around you, see what they're using, because there's a lot out there. All right, these I really wish I could talk about these for about an hour a piece, but we're gonna go through fast. If facial recognition software and cameras are a total game changer coming up, and it applies to reading customer feedback, tracking people throughout the conference experience, and potentially some other security and safety benefits that are coming along. But so look into that, and let's keep going, James. Again, wish I could talk about this forever because it's really interesting stuff. Augmented reality. If you have not looked into augmented reality and what people are doing with that, we've got a big section in that Google Doc that focuses on augmented reality. It just completely changes the experience and really blends that digital and physical world through your phone. Tons of great opportunities for that. So do some research, and James, we'll just keep on going because, again, we're running low on time. Translations, captions, deepfake, those are all going to be, so those are strengths of AI, and those areas are all going to be merging soon, right? So you're going to have these deepfakes, and you're going to be able to integrate the audio, and it's going to be able to translate, and it's going to be able to do it in multiple languages and all sorts of stuff. We got some really cool stuff coming along those lines. So definitely take a peek into that, because we can use that for a lot of our customer interactions and engagements. And we'll keep going, James. We'll just skip y'all can read the cartoon real quick. This is about translations and having avatars that can translate into multiple languages, based on an attendee walking up and and speaking to it in a particular language. So anyways, I wish I could go deeper on this, but we want to get through it. So let's keep on going, James. And then take a picture of this slide or look at it in the recording. There are a number of the ways that event technology is changing what we're capable of. And these are all things that, like, really can change your day-to-day world too, and make things a lot more efficient. So take a picture, do some research, and we'll keep on rolling. All right, so then we're looking at, okay, now we know what's out there. How are we going to align that with what we're trying to do? And again, this gets back to, really gets back to, can you articulate it? Can you make that connection for yourself and for others? And so, as I talked about earlier, James, let's go to the next slide real quick. Look for language that's already in your strategic priorities. Like, if there's some technology that you want to advance, but it's maybe not in your strategic priority, start looking for some of this language, because this is the stuff where this language, these projects, these type of priorities for organizations are very, very common. I would be very surprised if you didn't have at least half of these in your mission, vision, values, goals, strategic priorities. So use those. Figure out what's in there and figure out where that overlaps with the technology that you would like to use, and then use that to drive that narrative. And we'll keep on going, James. I know I say that as a communication major, so I know I'm like communicate, 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 but it really is important. And if you can't do that well, the project is almost shot from the beginning. So okay, and then now we get into kind of that strategic roadmap. This is the part where, now we're going to draw that map, right? We've decided we want to go on vacation in Washington D.C. All right, so now we're going to plan that road trip, right? Okay, so we're going to go. We're going to start in Denver. We're going to stop in Omaha. We're going to go through Chicago. We're going to like major chunks of that process. James, we can keep on moving. There we go. So you define where you want to go. You pick some of those major steps along the way. 2 to 3 is a good starting point. You may need more depending on the project that you're trying to do. But use AI. We get into this, and James will do this a little bit here in a second. Use AI. Don't feel like it's cheating. It's not cheating, right? You're being efficient. You're moving quickly as you need to do. So plug that in. Say, hey, Chat GPT, give me a strategic roadmap. I want 3 key initiatives and 5 milestones for each. Spit them out, and it's great. It actually works really well. And so so give that a shot. Obviously, resource allocation budgeting. We just you clearly that's a big issue. We know it. When I did an accessibility project for EDUCAUSE, and we really tried to advance that, I started with what was cheap and free and what was already available. And I used all of that to really start moving the needle and build some momentum around this project. And then all of a sudden, they saw the ROI and there was a budget to back it up. And so, I mean, it took a long time. I'm happy to talk about that more with anybody. But you really start small, see what you can do, because there's a ton that's already available. And then talk to your suppliers, as we talked about earlier. There's a lot that we can offer, all sorts of creative, innovative ways that you can learn and get better and see this technology and use it without spending money on it. So, all right, let's keep going, James. All right, and then James, I think you were going to talk a little bit about this part, what's already available.
Sure. Yeah. Obviously, we've already talked about how we're utilizing Zoom here today. We have captions turned on through Zoom, but obviously, all these manufacturers, they all have different versions of the same type of tech, right? Microsoft, Google, Adobe, they all have different sources and different solutions. Some free, some not free, depending on what you need. So you need to just research these, understand if they fit for your event, and if they do, then maybe you can take advantage of some of these that are out there. We had a show in June, and at that event, we did have several people that were hard of hearing. And so we knew about it going in, and we wanted to make sure we took care of it. And so we had a solution I can talk to you about if you're interested later. It's called AVA, and it's basically a dictation software. We roll it out. We set it up in the room so that with the mixer that we have in the room for the audio, it's tied into an iPad. The individuals come into the room with their smart device, whether it be an iPad or an iPhone. They scan a QR code. They go sit down, and they literally have any mic that is spoken into in the room will then be captioned in front of them. So it's a great solution for them. There is cost involved. It's not free. But again, it is something that you need to be making certain that you're taking care of, the folks with whatever their scenario might be. And there are many different solutions out there. Your supplier should be able to help you with those kinds of options. But again, do some research, look at all the different tools via the different products. Dan, is this you?
All right, and James, I know you were good. Well, we're going to talk about, yeah, I can do this. Well, so key performance indicators are really, it's that next step, that next level of getting more detailed with your planning, more granular about it. And so we can keep going, James. We'll go through this kind of quickly. If you're not familiar with key performance indicators, definitely research them. It's basically a SMART goal, but enhanced a little bit, more actionable, balanced across organizations, and really there's a continuous improvement element to these. And so really, and we can keep going, James, use ChatGPT, use AI. This is another area. This is like, you can take a picture of this. I typed this into ChatGPT, and it gave me a great readout. And of course you have to iterate, but it gets you started and it gets you through kind of that writer's block. So use that to your advantage. It's a powerful tool. It's really good at it. So do it, be efficient, like start saving yourself time and energy right now by doing that. Yeah. All right, James, let's keep on rolling. And because I definitely want to get into this final stage of continuous improvement. This is really, really critical, and this is where a lot of organizations don't do well, right? And so some key components to that, it's really closing the loop. It's taking the end of this product cycle and bringing all that momentum and that knowledge and that experience into that next cycle, and making sure that that iterative process continues, right? And it's, again, really difficult, but you've got to provide your feedback loops. We talked about customer feedback earlier, right? In the word cloud. Absolutely. But what are you collecting? Who are you collecting it from? And then how are you going to analyze that? That's another thing. Use AI to analyze survey data and feedback. Qualitative, quantitative, doesn't matter. It's great at spitting out some results in data analysis. So use that. It will save you a ton of time. But you have to be intentional about that. And James, let's go to the next slide. You have to be intentional about that process and how you're going to use it, and how you got to get that process started before you really launch stuff, right? At EDUCAUSE, I did a lot. You go to a conference, you learn a bunch of stuff, you're super motivated, you're like, I can't wait to get back and tell the team about it. And then you get back and you check your emails, and all that momentum is lost, and like you just never get back around to it. I'm sure I'm totally guilty of that. I'm sure there are others in the room who are too. And so, but I said, all right, I'm going to be intentional on stopping that process. We're like, before we go to a conference, before we run a conference or attend a conference, I'm creating a Google Doc where my team can put their notes and their thoughts and their photos and everything else in there. We've got a meeting on the books for a week after we get back where we're going to discuss this, and we've got a plan for how we like discuss it. We pick our priorities, we brainstorm together, we say these are the ones that we can actually do this year. The rest we're tabling for next cycle. It's not a no, we're tabling it for later when we have different resources. And then we assign it to people, and we're like, okay, you implement this one, you implement this one. And so, but with that intentionality and that process laid out in advance, we completely changed our event cycle, and we were all of a sudden able to really make a lot more meaningful changes. And it was great. It was great results. And I'm still really proud of what we accomplished with that. So, but that's that iterative formula. You have to close that loop, and you have to be intentional about it. So, as you know, there are going to be tons of obstacles and tons of people who have done this, who are willing to help and share their tips and tricks. So let's go into a couple of obstacles real quick. Budget, right? We know that. We talked about it. Resistance to change. We saw that in the word cloud too. People don't want to change, right? So budget for that emotionally and time-wise and everything else, because it's going to take you longer to get those people on board. You don't have enough staff, and actually not having enough staff is a reason to invest in technology, because that can help cover some of that gap as you build those efficiencies, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then, but lots of tips and tricks as well. James, we can go to the next slide. And yeah, lots. And you take a picture. One of the ones that I really would like to stress here, though, I think most of these will make sense to you, but this idea of quick and imperfect iterations, doing small chunks and doing it quickly and doing it imperfectly, and then iterating on that and fixing it on round two is so much better than trying to do one big launch and making it perfect. It's never going to be perfect. By the time you get there, everything has changed anyways. So do it quickly, pick smaller projects, and rev that cycle up as many times as you can. And you'll find a lot more success as you roll through that process. Okay, James, let's keep going. All right, so there we are. That's the end of our how. So get help, figure out what's going on, use language to articulate that, and then start building out your strategic process, right? Create that roadmap, start to get more nuts and bolts. All right, how much is this going to cost? What do we need? Who's going to do it? By when? And then iterate, then make it better. Like, do it again, make it better the next time. And so again, I know we really had to breeze through a lot of that. I wish we could unpack a lot more, but yeah, it's now. So now that we have 1 minute left for group time, what I would like you to do, and this is the most important part of the group activity, I really wanted us to do it, but turn to your neighbor right now, hand them your business card, and like trade contact information, because you've got partners in this room right now who agree with you that this is a priority, who are who have heard the same message, and who can like maybe bounce some ideas off of them, reach out after the conference and say, hey, are you making any progress, right? Have some external accountability as you start to move forward, and some help along the way. So I highly encourage that. That's where I've been most successful again. All right, but I know we are at time. I don't want to hold anybody on their away from break and coffee and all that jazz. But we've gone through that why, we've gone through a lot of that how, and we obviously love talking about this. So feel free to reach out. Please reach out if you want to dig deeper on some of this. We're really open to it. Send us an email, reach out on LinkedIn. If anybody's out in the Denver area, in Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, Utah, you want to learn more about Rocky Mountain PCMA community, things like that, please reach out, because it really is a powerful community. So the more you get help from all of us, the better you're going to be. So, and then James, any additional closing thoughts?
No, I agree. I wish we had more time. It was a lot to cover in an hour, and we managed to get through most of it. But thanks all of you so much, and enjoy the rest of your time at the conference.